and welcome to the Healthy Work and Workplaces podcast, hosted by the Healthy Work Research Unit at Aston University. Today's guest is Laura Byrne. She's a final year PhD student in the Department of Work and Organisation within the Business School at Aston University. We are delighted to have her here with us today, and she'll be talking to us a little bit about her work related to well-being in the workplace. Laura, hello, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Before we dive into things, can we have you start by introducing yourself a little bit, talking about your background, what got you into this field and this topic, kind of how did you end up where you are now and why well-being?
Okay, so I started as a psychologist, so I have a psychology background, and I did my master's in applied positive psychology and coaching psychology at the University of East London, which was absolutely fantastic, a fantastic experience. And after that, I spent a short time as an entrepreneur. So I decided that I wanted to develop some digital wellbeing interventions for the workplace. And the aim was to develop interventions that were evidence-based and also focused on the positive side of well-being instead of relieving things like anxiety and depression and stress and so on. During that time as an entrepreneur, I actually came to realise how limited the evidence base was, and that spurred this interest in pursuing a PhD, because I really wanted to go much more deeply into understanding the evidence behind it and how that is being researched within academia and so on. And it was quite serendipitous. I was working over the road from Aston University at a place called iCentrum, and I was reading a research paper by Dr. Luke Fletcher, and this was about a meaning intervention in the workplace. So this was a more positive side of well-being, and I thought, this is the person who I'm going to approach and apply to. And Aston sounded absolutely fantastic because it had this triangle between research and business and academic practice. And so, yes, I decided to apply to Luke, and Luke accepted me, and that's the start of that, the start of the PhD.
Excellent, good stuff. So you're here today to talk about your most recent project and kind of the core project, I suppose, that forms the focus of your PhD. So can you tell us a little bit about this project?
Yes. So the PhD has investigated the definition, enactment, and experience of wellbeing initiatives, strategy, interventions within organisations. So I have conducted the research with 3 organisations, one very large, one medium, one small. I've also interviewed a range of practitioners. These practitioners were quite often in other organisations, or the practitioners were entrepreneurs or owners of wellbeing businesses that organisations might purchase. So I had, broadly speaking, 4 case studies, because the practitioners were defined as a case study themselves. I also sought to interview a range of managers, practitioners, and employees within each of the organisations to try and understand if there were any differences and similarities between the perspectives of what wellbeing is, how it should be enacted, and also how it is being experienced.
Okie doke. And so there's been an awful lot of work done on well-being for a long, long time. Why was it you felt you needed that there was more work to be done in this area? What do you think that this project offered that perhaps hadn't been done before?
So I felt that there was a significant amount of research that focused on assessing the effectiveness of interventions. So this research would focus on taking a group of participants and assessing them before and then assessing them after the intervention to see if the intervention worked. And most of the research in this space is quantitative. So I decided to do a qualitative project that really sought to understand what people think the essence of wellbeing is and how they are experiencing it in organisations as it stands today, and how they would like to see wellbeing moving forward into the future. I also wanted to understand what was going on in the context that was influencing wellbeing and the understanding of what wellbeing is and perceptions regarding how wellbeing should be enacted. So this actually required a qualitative approach, a different lens, and really an intense amount of time and case study research.
So some people would say that the wellbeing drum has been banged enough times and this has kind of been done to death. What would you say to those people?
Okay, so I would say that one of the findings that came through really strongly is that participants feel that global events are really impacting decisions regarding what to do about wellbeing. So for instance, in the last few years, we've had COVID, we've had cost of living crisis, we've had the war in Ukraine, we've had large-scale movements to flexible working. All of these have really impacted leaders and practitioners' understanding of what wellbeing is and also what to do about it. And in 5, 10, 15 years' time, we're going to have new crises. When wellbeing isn't a finished product, we're going to need new interventions, new initiatives, new strategies and approaches to deal with all of these things that our organisations constantly need to be adapting to. And wellbeing is always going to be a part of that because we react and we respond to these events in all sorts of different ways. Also, even with individuals have different experiences throughout their lives. They develop different understandings of what wellbeing means to them in their particular point in their life, in their particular moment in their career. And this is all in an interplay with what is going on in the organisation, what is going on in society, what is going on with these global events. So it is a constant moving target, and there is no one initiative that's going to hit that target, that's going to be that panacea or silver bullet that we're all hoping for. We're going to need a variety of solutions, a variety of ideas, and our understanding of what those things should be are definitely going to continue to evolve over time.
Mm-hmm. So when people do qualitative research, there's kind of broadly two directions that they can employ. The first is what's known as the top-down approach, where you kind of go in with a theory or a conceptual framework and you're sort of looking and guiding and you're looking for data points to line up with that or not. And then the other approach is the bottom-up approach, where it's kind of, hey, I'm just going to interview a bunch of people and then look at what they say and build insights and theory from there. Did you adopt one of those positions for this work?
Okay, so I actually did both. So I've gone in with the existing theory. So I've read up on a lot of existing theory pertaining to wellbeing, but I was also open to the generation of new theory as a result of the project. So I've taken an approach called a critical realist approach. This is an approach that not everyone has heard about, but it is a fantastic lens through which to do research. And through this approach, I was not tied to the inductive or the deductive approach. I was able to do something called retroduction, which involved being aware of what existing theory says about these concepts to do with well-being, but also then having that freedom to move away from the data a little bit and think a little bit more creatively about what is going on. So within the thesis, I do discuss the findings through the lens of institutional logic, which institutional logics touches on our belief systems and how these feed into the meanings that we ascribe to certain phenomena. So within this project in particular, I found that people were looking at, when deciding what to do for wellbeing, they might have made that decision through a market logic lens. So it's all about the business case, or a strategic logic lens. So looking at the business case in terms of why we should adopt this wellbeing strategy. And then there was also the caring logic lens. So this was about doing wellbeing because we genuinely care, and it's not necessarily about the business case. And these logics can come into conflict, and it then this can create some sort of conflict within, but in terms of other people's perceptions regarding what is it you're doing and why are you doing this. So I use the institutional logic lens. Also, I use something called morphogenesis, which is Margaret Archer's theory. And this just looks at the interplay between culture, structure, and how that enables and constrains our actions, so our definitions and decisions regarding wellbeing. But then it also looks at agency, and that's our control, our decision making, how we can actually perhaps push back and transform and structure and culture. So I've used these theoretical lenses, and I've been able to spot some implicit theories within the data, within the findings. So participants have implicit theories that they use to make decisions, such as the happy productive worker thesis or the happy safe worker thesis. So these implicit theories are actually informing participants' definition and enactment of wellbeing and the decision regarding why they're doing it. So these theories are feeding into all of that. But within the thesis, I move on a little bit and do suggest my own theory regarding how to overcome this conflict between caring and market and strategic logic.
Excellent, good stuff. And so you conducted a series of interviews. Excuse me. Can you give us just a couple of the questions that you may be asked? And I don't know if you've got any quotes there that you can share with us, or maybe just kind of capturing the general gist. But what kind of the findings that tumbled out really is what we're interested in.
Okay. So one of the questions I ask participants is, what is influencing your definition of what wellbeing is, or how wellbeing should be enacted? And from that, I was able to generate 3 themes. So participants would talk about their own personal experiences, such as experiences with friends and family, helping people with their poor wellbeing. And this was influencing their understanding of what wellbeing is, what to do about it, and why it should be enacted in the workplace. Participants often talked about their experience with previous organisations and how that was often bad, and then they were trying to move things forward and make the workplace better. Then participants talked about the influence of society. So the theme, this is a hot topic in society. There's more talk about wellbeing in society, and there's pressure on businesses to focus on wellbeing, and this is coming from the media and society. Also, there are social movements within society, such as equality, diversity, and inclusion. Also, the idea that it's about meeting the needs of all stakeholders rather than shareholders. So you've got that stakeholder theory in there. This is happening in society. Investors, for example, are saying, what is your wellbeing strategy? How are you looking after your employees? There's this pressure and expectation on businesses. And also, other businesses within society are increasingly adopting wellbeing strategy. This is creating that pressure for other businesses to stay up to date, to adopt wellbeing strategy, and to attract talent, because we have range of global events that are feeding into all of this as well. Another thing that is influencing participants is the organisation's approach. So this is feeding into their perception of what wellbeing is and what should be done about it. And what I'm finding is these personal experiences, things happening in society and the organisation are all in an interplay, and these are feeding into how participants define, enact and experience wellbeing. So this feeling that we're embedded within a context, wellbeing is embedded within this ecosystem and context, and this is really influencing the status quo of wellbeing as it stands today. Another question I asked was, if you could design a wellbeing strategy from scratch, what would be top of your list in terms of what you would do for wellbeing? Participants often spoke about the need to have an open and inclusive culture, that culture would be top of their list, or leadership was really important. Participants would often talk about meeting individual needs, and that was always sort of caveated with, we do need a whole organisational approach, so it can't be completely individualised and unstructured, and the participants wanted a whole organisational approach that included attention to culture and leadership and a range of benefits, for example. But then there was the idea that this whole approach needs to be tailored to meet individual needs. And there was often the suggestion that the link there is the line manager, like the line manager knowing what the whole organisation approach is, understanding individual needs, and then almost being that signposter or enabler or that person to have a conversation with about what could be done to meet needs. When I ask questions as well about what participants think the definition of wellbeing is, one of the most common answers is it's about mental and physical health, but many participants also recognise that wellbeing is multidimensional and it can also be about growth. So the more, what I studied in positive psychology, the optimal human functioning side. So through that, participants also suggested that line managers need to be aware that it's not always about treating anxiety and stress and depression and so on. Wellbeing can also be about growth and meaning and flourishing within an organisation. So it's understanding the difference between these and knowing what employees need, whether it is help for these distress things, or is it more of I can help you here to flourish, to grow and experience perhaps more autonomy in your work and so on. So yeah, that's just a few findings.
Great. So I think there's a few things that you mentioned there that were super interesting. The first is that has been this explosion and focus on well-being recently, and that companies are increasingly adopting well-being policies. But on the flip side of that, so to speak, is that you have a bunch of individuals to which well-being means different things. And so for one person, that might mean, well, I need help with my anxiety. It might be I need help with a physical disability. But for other folks, it might be, well, I need help to be able to grow and to flourish. And so designing a kind of one-size-fits-all well-being policy must be incredibly difficult. So there's that challenge. And then the second challenge is that you mentioned that even if you design these policies and have the structure in place, what it feels like to the folks on the ground and the way that they experience it perhaps may not land as intended, and that one of the conduits through which that policy is supposed to be experienced is through, like you said, line managers. So was there any kind of concrete recommendations, or would you suggest any recommendations to help facilitate that transition from a policy level down to what it actually feels like? Were there any concrete things that tumbled out of that?
Yeah, so I think line managers and leaders and employees have got to remember that perception is what really matters. So the perception of why you are doing this. So one of the really important findings that came out was the idea that, so I asked participants, why do you think your organisation is doing wellbeing? Why are they doing it in particular? And the employees would often say, and managers would say, it's to meet business needs. It's because the business has needs for productivity, to reduce absence. They would talk about the happy productive worker theory. They would talk about the business needs in the eye of society, meeting the reputation requirements, looking good for investors, looking good for potential new employees, and so on. So I was hearing all of this. It's all about business needs. There was a little bit about it's because the organisation genuinely cares, and then there was far less of a suggestion that this is a mutual gains thing. This is business needs and employee needs. So I was gaining the evidence for those three themes, with the business case being the biggest reason why. And then I was also gaining a significant amount of evidence that employees are quite sceptical and in some cases cynical regarding the intentions for wellbeing initiatives and so on. When participants spoke about this, they often referred to their perception of other organisations or their perception of previous organisations. They very rarely said this about their organisations that they're in now. However, it was mentioned frequently. Nearly by every participant there was this, I'm not quite sure whether this is to meet our needs. I'm not quite sure if this is because organisations genuinely care. When speaking to managers would really communicate to me that we are doing this because we genuinely care. There's an authenticity behind this. They understood the business case, but they were doing it because they were genuine. They did genuinely care. But the evidence from the employees is that the employees don't get this. The employees do not have this message as it currently stands. So one of my recommendations to organisations is, if you do genuinely care and you are doing this for genuine reasons, you have to communicate this loudly, and it has to come across in your actions and your comms as much as possible, because that will help to alleviate some of that scepticism and some of that cynicism amongst employees. Because if they feel that it's for a mutual gains reason, then they may feel like more likely to get involved. If they feel like, well, this is just being done because the business has got a lot of needs that they need to meet, and it's for productivity, it's for absence and so on, then that's going to have an impact on trust and generate some of that skepticism. So that's one of the top recommendations that I gave organisations. Communicate that intention, that mutual, especially the mutual gains intention, because it isn't just about caring and meeting employee needs. This is about both. It's about flourishing for the individual, for the business, and then when the business is flourishing, it's for flourishing. Then that goes into society and helps society flourish, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of, it's all interconnected. Some people use the term kind of the well-being ecosystem. That it's treated at work, it goes elsewhere, and there's productive and positive outcomes elsewhere. And so, if I've understood you correctly, if you think of it as kind of a chain where you've got the organisation, the line managers, and the employees, that chain is pretty strong between the line managers and the company. So the managers kind of understand the well-being aspect to it, but the chain is weaker between the line managers and the employee, and that's where you get this skepticism arising or cynicism. You know, there's lots of literature out there about well-being washing, for example, that it's simply lip service or very surface level accommodation for well-being. So it seems that is the area to focus on is that gap, if you like, between the line manager and the folks that they are accountable to.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I talked about some of these implicit theories and how they are influencing the experience and the definition and enactment of well-being. And that this implicit theory of well-being washing is within the discourse, within society and within the media right now. So we hear a lot about greenwashing. We hear a lot about diversity and inclusion washing, and we hear a lot about well-being washing. This is in the media and society right now, and employees are picking up on this discourse. And in many cases, organisations may be doing this. They may be paying that lip service, and they may be getting away with it for a while. They may be able to do well-being inauthentically for a while if the perception is on the employee side that they're doing it for genuine reasons. But very soon, if they're not doing it for genuine reasons, then that's going to come through in actions, and it's going to come through the reality between what is being said and what is actually being done is soon going to be picked up. And then it's very hard to rebuild that trust after that. So, I think employees are picking up on this discourse, and they're looking out to their organisation to go, well, is my organisation doing this? I'm hearing that organisations are doing this, but is mine doing this? And they're looking for those cues, I think, to see if this is being done for genuine reasons. So I would say to organisations, if it is being enacted for genuine reasons, then really, really do communicate that in your words and in what you do.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Laura. So I've just got a couple of questions to wrap up on. The first is, what's next for you? So you're a final year PhD student. What's going on over the next 6 to 12 months, do you think?
Yeah, so I'm writing up at the moment. So I'm about 50,000 words in, I would say. So I've got about 30,000 more to write. So that will take me another couple of months, I would say. And then I'm going to be working on a couple of papers that will be outputs of the PhD. And I am also going to be looking for employment from the autumn, from September time. So I'm looking to go out into the world of business to be a practitioner or to be a consultant. And I hope to stay in touch with Aston and perhaps do some guest lecturing if Aston would have me. That would be my way of giving back to Aston to say, thank you very much for this absolutely wonderful experience that I've had on this PhD. But yeah, those are my next steps.
Excellent. And the final question then is, do you have any advice for students who are looking to pursue a PhD or who might be interested in getting into this kind of work? Or to phrase it a different way, if you could go back a couple of years or to the start of your PhD, is there any advice that you might have given yourself to maybe make things a bit smoother?
So I would just say, if you're really passionate about learning, if you love reading, if you love writing, and you have this curiosity and love of theory, then definitely go for a PhD. And then when you're doing it, I would say, especially when it's time to start recruiting organisations or participants, you have to find this balance between patience and perseverance. So it's persevering and then having some patience, and then persevering some more and having some patience. There's going to be lots of bumps in the road during a PhD. It's a long time. It's 3 to 4 years. I mean, for example, when I first recruited an organisation, a couple of weeks after they said yes, they pulled out, and I had to keep going. I had to always have that plan B and plan C, and just always think about, well, what do I do now? And I think as long as you keep persevering, keep pushing, and then having a little bit of patience in between, I think that's the best bit of advice I could give.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. I've been your host, Simon McCabe from the Healthy Work Research Unit at Aston University. We hope you'll tune in next time.